Welcome back to Sportshire. I'm your host, Griff McClellan, and today I'm pleased to welcome guest speaker Jeremy Linfield.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Today's episode is all about the college football playoff. Let's start by examining the four teams. They are LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Oklahoma. Let's start by discussing LSU. Why not? They're the number one overall seed.
I mean, they're very good. I would say they're confidently going to beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I think, kind of got in just because there were no other teams that were good. Like, there's a clear top three teams. They're led by Joe Burrow, the Heisman winner. I mean, their offense is really good. Their defense is really good. They're going to be tough to beat. But I did see recently that their running back got injured, and Coach Orgeron is not sure if he's going to play or not. So that can be a key factor. Any small thing might change the outcome of the game. You need all the help you can get.
It definitely could. I mean, Joe Burrow, as good as he is, he can't carry the load entirely by himself. So
exactly.
Football is a team sport. We all know that. But if something went wrong with that LSU lineup, they could collapse.
Yeah. Running back Christian Hilaire, I think he did something to his knee in practice. I'm not totally sure though, but
yeah,
you never know.
Yeah. Overall, I do agree with you, though. I think that's an easy win for them over Oklahoma. They're clearly more talented. They have more depth. But the one factor we have to consider for Oklahoma is their quarterback, Jalen Hurts. This year he finished as a Heisman runner-up, but he has experience, which Burrow does not have.
For sure. I mean, Oklahoma's offense is very good. They're a tough offense to stop. It's just their defense, like their defense is not great. Against Baylor, they barely escaped with 2 wins. They've had close calls the entire season. They lost to Kansas State, I believe. That was their only loss. I mean, and it's their defense that fails them. Their offense isn't the problem. They're led by Jalen Hurts. They have amazing receivers. They have an amazing offensive line, amazing running backs. It's just their defensive guys that get exposed.
That's very true, especially last year. And every year they've made the playoff. This is now their 4th appearance. They have yet to win a game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've had Heisman-winning quarterbacks such as Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, who've carried that load in offense, and they can put up 50 points a game. But in the end, their defense is what got to them.
Exactly. It's a symptom of Oklahoma, and as a larger picture, it's the symptom of the Big 12. Their defenses never seem to shape up, and that's what kind of prevents the Big 12 from ever winning a championship.
That's true. They're the only Power 5 conference that has yet to win a playoff game in this playoff era.
Wow. The Pac, who's won from the Pac-12?
Oregon in the very first year with Marcus Mariota.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember.
But yeah, other than that, it's been mostly dominated by the ACC and the SEC with Alabama, Clemson.
Yeah.
Alabama's not going to be relevant this year, but LSU certainly is one of the top-tier teams.
I agree, for sure, wholeheartedly. I mean, Alabama, they were the favorite coming in. And once Tua went down, it kind of dropped off for them. They didn't have the depth at quarterback necessary to push for the playoff push. So they're not a factor this year. And LSU is the favorite. I will say LSU is the favorite. That doesn't mean that they'll win, but they're I would say the clear-cut favorite.
Yeah, and that leads us to our next semifinal to preview, the Fiesta Bowl between Ohio State and Clemson. This one's going to be a lot closer of a battle. Would you say so?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, on paper, top to bottom, I think Ohio State has the better roster, led by Justin Fields, and on the defensive end, led by Chase Young. Chase Young was a Heisman finalist. I mean, they're stacked.
Oh yeah, they had 2 Heisman finalists this year.
Yeah, Justin Fields was a Heisman finalist.
Yeah.
Wow, 2 Heisman finalists. That's tough to beat. But I mean, Clemson just has the experience. They're led by Trevor Lawrence, who last year in the playoffs really showed like what he's made of, and had NFL scouts saying he'll probably be the number 1 pick when he declares for the draft. So I really think that he comes alive in the playoffs, and I think he's going to lead Clemson to a win over Ohio State and ultimately win over LSU.
Wow, that's bold. But certainly, you're not wrong. Trevor Lawrence looks like an NFL pro out there. He looks like a veteran. This is only his 2nd year starting, but in last year's playoff, he he crushed Notre Dame, and then eventually he unexpectedly crushed Alabama in the national championship game. So he's definitely proven to be a winner. He has yet to lose a game in his career.
That's a very statistic that's a crazy statistic that I never thought about. But yeah, he hasn't lost yet, and
That's
I don't
true.
think he will.
Yeah, and Clemson currently owns the longest active winning streak in college football at 28 games, I believe.
Wow.
They haven't lost since the Sugar Bowl 2 years ago to Alabama in the playoff.
Wow.
So they've definitely got something going right now. They're the defending champs, obviously. So I wouldn't be surprised if they came out on top.
Yeah.
However, I am going to pick Ohio State to win this one, just because I think if you're looking at this season alone, they've clearly been the more dominant team. They have better wins. They beat I think they're ranked 4th or 5th, Penn State at the time.
Yeah.
They also crushed Michigan 56-27.
They beat Wisconsin twice. I mean,
They did beat Wisconsin twice. That's right.
Yeah.
They came back in the Big Ten title game.
yeah.
So they've definitely shown they are worthy of a championship contender. It'll be a very, very close match in the end. But I think Ohio State will prevail.
Yeah, I will say the schedule of Clemson is the one thing that gives me pause in picking them, because the ACC isn't as strong as the SEC or the Big Ten for that matter. But I don't know. I think Clemson is going to eke out a win over Ohio State, and then I think it's going to be a shootout with LSU in the championship. I don't think Clemson would win a defensive battle. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have to play at the top of his game and to beat both Ohio State and LSU.
Yeah, that could be an epic showdown for the ages.
For sure.
But back to the Fiesta Bowl between OSU and Clemson. Clemson has had Ohio State's number over the years. They met in the playoff 3 years ago, and they shut them down 31-0.
Wow.
Then again, that was 3 years ago,
Yeah.
but still, Dabo Swinney knows how to beat Ohio State.
Oh, for sure. Dabo Swinney is a great coach. He always, I feel every year Clemson kind of not stays under the radar, but is a little underrated coming into the playoffs. And then Dabo Swinney just prepares for the game. He's a great coach, and Clemson just ends up crushing in the playoffs, or at least putting up a fight in every single game.
Yeah, they're tough to beat. There's no doubt about it. I just think this year, Ohio State, like I said, has been the more dominant team. And Clemson, they're undefeated. However, they had one instance this season when they barely beat North Carolina after holding them off on a failed 2-point attempt. So in my opinion, they ought to have lost that game. So they haven't had they've had a weaker schedule. So therefore, I'm picking Ohio State to take this one.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, their schedule is weak, but ever since that close call to North Carolina, they've been on a tear. They've just been blowing their competition out the water.
That's true. Trevor Lawrence has he stepped it up even more somehow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he really has. He's an all-American quarterback, in my opinion. He's a great quarterback.
Certainly. All right, this leads us to the national championship. You have Tigers versus Tigers, LSU and Clemson.
I do.
And you think Clemson will win that?
Yeah, I mean, I want to give it to the experience. I don't know how Joe Burrow is going to perform on the biggest stage of his career. Granted, he's passed every test with flying colors so far, but I think I just trust Clemson more in a big-time pressure situation. I trust Trevor Lawrence and his receivers. I mean, they're also great. Like the entire offense on Clemson is really good. Their only real weakness, as opposed to their championship team, is their defensive line, in which they had 3 defensive linemen go to the NFL, which is clearly a loss. But I think Clemson is going to win in a showdown against LSU.
Yeah, what are you thinking for a final score of that game? High scoring game?
For sure. I'm thinking more along the lines 45-42, something like that. Yeah.
That'd be epic.
That would be a sick game.
Yeah, the ratings for that game would be high.
For sure.
Through the roof.
Yeah.
And obviously I have LSU versus Ohio State. I have to give it to LSU. Again, both teams have been so great this year. I just think LSU's had a dream season. Joe Burrow has lit up the scoreboard. Yeah. He's the Heisman winner, as we mentioned. I can see them pulling out victorious. Again, I do think it'll be a high-scoring game. Probably 45-40, something around that range. I can see LSU bringing home their first college football playoff national championship in their home state of Louisiana. It's being played in New Orleans this year.
They do have home field advantage, which can be a factor.
But speaking of home field advantage, the Georgia Bulldogs have had that recently with the Atlanta Falcons, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That hasn't worked for them. They did win the SEC title game there once, but then they lost the national championship to Alabama one year, and then this year they got crushed by LSU.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, usually when you get to this level, the better the team, the less the home crowd will affect the team. Mm-hmm. So I don't think in this situation the home crowd will necessarily affect the away team per se. I just think that it might give some more confidence to the home team and maybe allow the home team to get to that next level and just take the game by an edge.
That's very true. Home field advantage can provide a difference for sure.
Yeah.
But overall, I have LSU taking it home.
I mean, I can't argue with that. LSU they've been amazing this year. They've beat Alabama, they've beat Georgia, they've beat Florida, all great teams, all top 10 teams, or maybe top 15 teams now with the loss, but they're all great teams that they've beat.
For sure. Switching gears now, let's go back to the beginning of the playoff and when the rankings were still being discussed. Do you think the committee got it right this year?
I think the committee got it right. I think they nailed it. I mean, in my opinion, I think there was a clear top four. There are clear top three teams, and then there are clear top four teams. There's everyone, for the most part, in the top 10 lost besides the four teams that are in the playoffs. So you're not going to get into a win. For the most part, you're not going to get into the college football playoffs with a loss in the last week. And you're also not going to get in with two losses. And each of those teams either has 0 or 1 loss.
That's true. LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson are all undefeated.
Exactly.
So they're all worthy of a championship. But they had to fill the 4th spot somehow. And I do agree. I think OU should be there. Even though, ironically, I don't think LSU-Oklahoma is going to be a great game.
No, I agree.
I do think they did get it right in terms of record. 1 loss versus 2 losses is a huge factor.
Yeah.
And OU had 1 loss. And if you look at the other teams, Alabama, Utah, Oregon, all these other teams that finished just on the outside had 2 losses. Yeah. And that's ultimately what prevented them from making the top 4.
There's been no team with 2 losses that's got into the playoffs because it's just each team. Every year there's always such great teams that will have 0 or 1 loss. So
that's true. It's important to consider, though, in the previous 5 years of the college football playoff, we've only had 1 undefeated champion. That was last year's Clemson team. Yeah. And we have yet to see a 1 seed win it all. It's either been the 2 seed or the 4 seed.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, therefore, I guess LSU could be worried this year because they're 1 seed.
The curse of the 1 seed. I mean, maybe.
It's true.
Let's see if it turns into a thing. But LSU is looking pretty good this year.
I agree. I'm going to ignore that 1 seed curse. I think LSU is hands down the best team. I think they deserve the 1 spot. It came down to LSU and Ohio State between who was going to get the top seed. Do you agree? I think LSU should have been number 1.
For sure. They had more wins against like top 10, top 15 teams. They had better wins against top 10, top 15 teams. The only real win that impressed me for Ohio State was against Penn State. Everything else was, I guess Michigan, but Michigan hasn't looked too good this year, besides 1 week against Notre Dame. I think LSU clearly deserved the number 1 spot.
I agree. All right, let's talk about, on a different note here, let's look at some of the other teams that aren't going to be playing in the big spotlight. For instance, who do you think, who was the biggest surprise team of this year? Which team really surprised you? For instance, maybe Baylor?
For sure. Baylor, they have a great coach. If they beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship, they would have been in the playoffs. Both of their losses were to Oklahoma in really close games. They were down to their 3rd-string quarterback, I believe, in the Big 12 championship, and they still had a chance to win it at the end. And yeah, for sure, Baylor was really surprising. I thought Utah was also really surprising. They were led by their defense. They also, if they won the last week, they probably would have gotten over Oklahoma.
I agree. I think if they'd won, they would have been. It would have been looked upon by the committee as the Final Four. The 4th spot would have come down to either Utah or Oklahoma.
But I think Utah.
Utah would have gotten in.
Yeah.
For sure. Baylor. was undefeated this year, except when they played OU.
I know. 2 losses to OU.
They had a 28-3 lead against Oklahoma, just like the Falcons did in the Super Bowl a few years ago. Some coincidence. But anyways, Baylor played fantastic all season long. They had it was a great underdog story. They were 1-11 just 2 seasons ago, and this year, had they won against OU in the Big 12 championship game, they would have solidified their spot as a championship contender as the 4th seed in the playoff.
For sure.
So definitely, they were a team to watch out this year that snuck up on lots of people, and who knows, maybe they might be back next year.
Maybe, we'll see. You never know.
Yeah, another team that I didn't expect, I didn't really have high expectations for this year, was Oklahoma State. But their running back, Chuba Hubbard, led the league in rushing.
Wow.
He had a phenomenal season. For a couple weeks, he was in the race for the Heisman. I think we all knew along that Joe Burrow was going to take it home. But it was interesting seeing Chuba Hubbard in the mix.
Do you know around how many rushing yards he had?
I don't know exactly. Considering, though, that Oklahoma State isn't the strongest team, considering they have OU in their conference, they always get overshadowed by OU. They're not necessarily a playoff contender. To see their running back take the league by storm is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's great for Oklahoma State. Hopefully, it allows them to build up their program with recruiting and things along those lines to get to their ultimate goal of the playoffs. But
all right, let's flip the switch now. Let's talk about the biggest disappointments this season. One team comes to mind. You could argue whether it was a disappointment or not. Alabama.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they started off strong. Obviously, they were undefeated until they lost to LSU.
They lost to LSU and then Auburn in the Iron Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, that was the LSU Alabama was like the matchup of the century. But I mean, they lost that game, and when Tua Tagovailoa got injured, that's kind of just sealed the deal. They didn't have enough quarterback depth to continue with their season. And
that's true.
That's what cost them.
Yeah. Normally, I wouldn't consider a team like this a disappointment. They had a phenomenal year.
Yeah.
They're a very strong team. They're well coached, extremely well coached. They've made the playoff in each of the last 5 seasons, though. And considering that they missed out this year for the first time and they came up empty without an SEC championship either, I would consider that a down year for them.
For sure.
Considering that they've always had such high expectations, and Alabama's always had this rich tradition of winning. It's part of their culture.
Yeah, for sure. It was a disappointing year for sure for them. They obviously had championship aspirations, but it just never came together.
Yeah, at the start of the year, I thought they were hands down the clear favorite.
Yeah.
I was expecting another Alabama-Clemson match.
I also was, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not how the season went. LSU surprised everyone. They got a new offensive coordinator, I believe, and he kind of just opened up their offense. They got a new coach somewhere, and he completely revamped the system, and that allowed Joe Burrow to thrive, their offense to thrive.
It's very true. And I should mention about Joe Burrow, it's been such an inspirational season, considering how he's always been doubted throughout his college career. He began at Ohio State. It'd be ironic if he beat them in the championship game, too. It might happen.
It might.
But if you look at the last 3 Heisman winners, they were all transfers. Baker Mayfield from Texas Tech to Oklahoma. You have Kyler Murray as well.
Yeah.
And this year, Joe Burrow. It goes to show, if you're doubted at first, if you're willing to go through these tough moments and to just continue working hard and strive for your goals, anything's possible.
Yeah. I mean, both Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray were number 1 picks, and Joe Burrow might also be a number 1 pick. It's 3 transfers to 3 number 1 picks. That's pretty incredible. I
do think Joe Burrow is very likely going to end up being the first overall draft pick by likely the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, they need a quarterback to say the least. But yeah, well, I think it's between him and Chase Young for the number 1.
That's true.
Overall pick.
Yeah, you don't hear about Chase Young as much because he's not a quarterback, but he's been a dominant defensive player. He's a defensive force for Ohio State.
For sure. He every game he just seems to do something special on the line, and that's why he's a top 5 pick.
Yeah, and it's funny as we're talking about the NFL, this year the likely MVP is Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens. if Lamar Jackson wins MVP this year, it'll be the second time in the history of football that the NFL MVP is younger than the Heisman winner in the same year.
Wow.
Lamar Jackson is younger than Joe Burrow.
That's crazy.
It's weird.
Yeah, for sure. I did not. I mean, I knew Lamar Jackson was drafted young, but I didn't realize just how young he was.
Yeah. I do see him going to the NFL next year. I think he will go to the Bengals.
Yeah, I agree.
Historically, Heisman winners haven't done great in the NFL. There have been a few that have shined. They haven't necessarily been great in the NFL, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lamar Jackson's completely off the charts this season.
Yeah, I know.
He's been putting up incredible numbers. And he won the Heisman just 3 seasons ago with Louisville.
Did he win the Heisman?
He did, yes.
Huh.
With Louisville, it's crazy.
Yeah, I remember him on Louisville. He was crazy, but all the NFL scouts statted him because they didn't think he could throw. They didn't trust that his running would translate to the NFL. They thought he would get injured once he got hit, but he's proving all the doubters wrong.
Yeah, and recently, I think last week, he broke Michael Vick's single-season rushing record for a quarterback.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff what you can do when you set your mind to it, which he clearly has. He's improved on the offseason. The Ravens have improved their offensive scheme, and look where they're at now.
Yeah, they are heavy favorites right now. They could go all the way. Mm-hmm. Lamar Jackson's just got his own very unique style of play, unlike any we've ever seen before.
Yeah, I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah, it really puts pressure on the defense having a QB who can take off at any time and just take off for a touchdown. It really puts pressure on your linebackers, who are usually slower than a quarterback like him. So it's really tough to defend him.
Yeah, and he's also beaten Tom Brady this year. He's had a phenomenal year. He's the first quarterback in the history of the NFL to record 2 perfect passer ratings in the same season. Mm-hmm. And just to add, this is pretty funny, I think. He has more rushing yards this season than Tom Brady does in his entire career.
That's not surprising. Tom Brady isn't a very mobile quarterback, but still, that's a crazy statistic. Just shows you how dominant,
how electric he's been all season.
For sure.
For sure. Well, are you excited for the college football playoff?
Yeah, I'm looking forward.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it all goes down.
Me too.
This year, it's pretty entertaining considering that we have 3 teams that have a legit chance of going all the way.
For sure.
Unlike in years past when we kind of figured it was going to be Alabama and Clemson.
Yeah. I mean, every year it's like, oh, maybe this team can win, maybe this team can win. But Alabama and Clemson have always been the heavy favorites to get to the championship. Or not always, but for the past couple of years, they've been the heavy favorites.
But this year we have a couple new teams in there, so it's anybody's shot.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it goes down.
Yeah.
All right, well, that will wrap up for today.
All right.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Sportshire. We'll see you next time. Happy holidays.